Okay, welcome to Leaders in Accounting and Finance. This is edition 7, and we're fortunate to have Dr. Charles Fang Cheng as our interviewee today, and I'm with Dr. Jyoti from the finance discipline. I'm representing accounting and finance, and we're going to interview Dr. Charles today. And Charles comes all the way from Muscat, Oman, where he is. So just a brief background. Dr. Charles, and he is a doctor, currently serving as Economic Affairs Advisor to Director General of Industry in Ministry of Commerce, Industry Investment Promotion in Muscat, Oman. And just before his appointment, Dr. Charles was Project Manager for Gulf Organization for Industrial Consulting, and that was in Doha, Qatar, and before that in Vienna, and before that when he graduated from Monash 2012. So welcome, Dr. Charles. And would you like to just expand on what you're currently doing? And it's just amazing that you're on the other side of the planet from where you graduated less than 8 years ago. And so tell me about what you're currently doing.
Sure, if I may. So right after the graduation, I expanded my postgrad study at Sydney, UNSW in 2012, and being an associate lecturer around the same time in the school, as Australian School of Banking and Finance. And in 2013, I accepted a placement in Vienna to join my postgrad course supervisor in the UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization. Since then, I have been with the organization for the past 7 years. I'm still affiliated with the organization as a non-resident advisor. Now, 2 years ago, I was invited by the government of Oman as a resident advisor to the Ministry of Commerce and Industry to support its reform on the Vision 2040 and devising the Manufacturing Strategy 2040. Because at that point in time, the country was eager to push forward its economic transformations and the diversifications. 3 months ago, I was reappointed by the cabinet as the economic affairs advisor to the vice minister in accelerating and advancing the economic reform. Now, what I've been doing lately, my more recent terms of references are to acquire the financial positions and the political space for the ministry for its development of programs and policy. To be honest, it's been quite a challenging time for me in the past 1 to 2 years, because my current working circle and content itself, it entailed those government bills, green papers, senior officials, governors, and sometime in the cabinet. And one thing has been clear to me is that a lot of diplomatic skills, political sense, understanding the perspective of the decision makers in wide ranging of a policy remit will probably more matter to me now than deeply acquired ingrained market experience or the sort of firm policy determination which I pursued in the past 7 years. There was a structure change for me in terms of a career-wise.
Wow.
Most recently, this is what happened this week in the shorter time spectrum. Now we are revising the bills. And in fact, we're quite anxious about that. We could not acquire the position for the ministry and sector because now the economy is in a downturn, the oil price and the COVID. And we try to strike a balance and try to keep everybody on board. And there are so many factors have to be part of the equations because every institution, as in other governments, has its own red lines. So what becomes matters is that listening becomes critical at this stage on what other parties have to say and what other party does not say, and what are the needs and what is between the lines, so that we can understand our position and try to reach a common goal. And because now it's almost 2 weeks left to 2021, we are still in the midst of finalizing the state budget and looking at the locations. In Malaysia, we passed through the bills, I think, not long ago. But in Oman, we are still at the final milestone there. There's still a last mile to go.
Wow.
This
Amazing.
is what I've been doing lately.
Yeah, Dr. Jyoti.
Yeah, Dr. Charles, you have a very impressive journey to what you are now. But as I know you were our undergraduate student here, and you extended your honors, I think. You did your honors here. Yeah,
Yes.
after that you left. Can you tell us what did you do after you left Monash, Malaysia? Of course, you went to University of New Sydney to do up your PhD in banking and finance. And
Mm-mm.
while you were doing your PhD, I presume that you were already in Vienna. And
Yes.
what one thing which motivated you to join United Nations, such a big organization? Don't
Sure.
you felt any jittery feelings of joining such a big institution?
Sure, my pleasure. So I'll start right after the undergrad graduation. So
Mm,
right after undergrad graduation, I pursued we call it the honors program at the
Mhm.
school. And what's the motivation behind? Because I felt that what I've learned throughout the courses in both econometric and finance, they are theoretical with some light application, but I wanted to deeply investigate a particular subject. At that point in time, I explored the stock price informative index, which is also part of my thesis and the
Mhm.
at NSW postgrad. Now, what motivated me to get into the World Organization? So I think what perhaps the question is what are the required skill
Mm.
sets I
Yes,
can give into the
that's
World
right.
Organization? I could share a little bit of the perspective. I get that from my colleagues some time ago, as well as
Mhm.
several years ago. In the organizations, I talk about what are their preferences about recruitment and resource plan, because from time to time we receive fresh grade interns and
Mhm.
also the junior analysts. I ask them what are the competency and what are the requirements. They
Mhm.
make clear to me that not only the technical competency, but also the sort of commercial and the business acumen, the
Mhm.
awareness of the global trends. And of course,
Mhm.
some of the critical personal traits will play a role. Confidence in speaking, conveying an idea,
Yeah.
listening are among the key competencies required for a candidate to land in the organizations. Now,
Mhm.
I always say, well, Monash has trained me over and above what might be expected on the technical portfolio, but
Mhm.
some other personal traits, I've managed to brush them out through curriculum in UNSW,
That's
also
good.
in time in the Peking University, and more
Mm.
importantly, the placement in the UN. And I would say this is how I get into the organization. The Monash Malaysia has trained me well on the technical portfolio, but what are
That's
required
wonderful.
into the
Mhm.
personal
Mhm.
traits? And
Mhm.
because the coursework at Monash is so condensed and we have limited time there, and of
Mhm.
course we are not expecting that the university to deliver all the solution and all the available skills. But there's still a
Mhm.
part that we have to brush it up, the
Acquire
traits.
and build by yourself. Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. That's right. You perfectly say it. You said it perfectly, Charles. I'm happy
Mm-mm.
about that. And you can you just highlight exactly what preparations you made or what it was required for you to be in where you are today,
mm.
at least at the start in the
But
UN.
like when he joined the United Nations, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm,
I would think 2 points here. 2 points here. Let me start with the first point. I will start with the teamworks. This is something I believe has always helped me to harness the consensus that take any team in any institution around the globe that I have led further and forward. It did help enormously, at, especially at the Vice Minister office, especially when we deal with a different view. And we are only strong and convincing if we are strong at home. So teamwork is very important, and oftentimes making sure that we are a team. We might disagree among ourselves, like when we do the group assignment at the school.
Mm.
We disagree
Mm.
among
Yeah.
ourselves,
Yeah.
but once the disagreement is settled, when there's a common line, that we should all move together. I think this is a huge impact. I think teamwork will be my first point. And the second point that I would take away, that the key takeaway that for my first 2 years is that how to listen. And this is something that has certainly served me well, and I hope will continue to serve the UN and other ministries well, listening well. Because listen to the policymaker, to the people, listen to their hardship. This is
Mm.
which the UN is always got involved when there's a desperate situation.
mm,
But listen to people, but as well as try to understand multiple voices, including the usual, unusual, and the unexpected voice.
Right.
But
That's
the
good.
UN, but interesting, Charles, like you're in Malaysia when you applied to join the UN. Did you just respond to an advertisement? Pardon?
Yeah, when I was in Sydney.
You're in Sydney. You're
He
doing your
applied when he was in Sydney.
and
So how the
University of New
transition.
South Wales.
Right.
Yes. And then there was an advert in Australia for you to
Yes,
join.
through the network in Australia. So the
Wow.
transition point was that after honors, I embarked on the at that point in time they call it the mix of the academic and industry track in the PhD.
Wow.
So in the PhD they have the different category: academic track, industry track. So I was exploring both options,
Okay.
and then by good occasions I get involved and I get connected with some officials at the organization
In
and
Australia.
Charles, if I'm not mistaken, I think you did a second PhD in Peking. You were doing something similar. Simultaneously, you were doing something else.
Yes. This is something.
I remember.
Yes. When I started at the UNSW, like other students, there will be a 1.5 year compulsory coursework.
Right.
So at that point in time, I opted for the academic track. So there will be 1.5 years. Normally, university would have 1 semester and most 2 semester coursework. I think 4 to 6 units. But academic track would require, I think, at least 12 coursework. So I enrolled into academic track. And in the meantime, I tried to explore, because the university did receive officials from organization representation for different prac talk. So that's an occasion where I get engaged with these officials. And then through the communications, I make my own value propositions, how we can work together. And then I managed to invite one of the officials as my co-supervisor in a PhD.
Oh, so official from UN.
Yes, as my co-supervisor, because co-supervisor for industry track does not necessarily require academics from the same university.
Okay, and this is why you're in Sydney, and you get a co-supervisor from the United Nations, who's based in Sydney too, correct?
Yes. So by the time when I was in Vienna, I enrolled into the full-time job, but also as a placement of the PhD.
Wow.
Oh, you went on a placement for that. Yeah, right. Wonderful. Now I get it.
And what was your job description when you first joined this placement in Vienna? What was your job description? What was it? Were you in finance? What particulars of your job description?
So when I started, I think they're very appreciative of my quantitative skills.
That's right. You had a very good quantitative skill.
Yes, for all the institutions, we have the international report, but what's behind the report is a long series of background paper. So those papers that they will require the quant analyst. So that's where I fit myself for the first 2 years before converting into the expert contract. I started as a quantitative analyst, a consultant.
What was an example of a project that you worked on? Like what type of analysis were you doing? Was it macroeconomic analysis or was it micro aspects?
Both. I would say both, but more inclined toward the macros. Because for international institutions, they are mandated to produce sort of the forecasts. So that's where I can apply my skills.
You have used all your econometrics knowledge to do the forecasting. Very good.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Wow. Was this a particular? Which arm of the United Nations was it? Was it associated with the economic development of third world, or was it in general everything?
More on the development economics. And that's how I started with the finance. And then now my area, it's more towards the industrial development.
Wow.
But the further we go, we will see that these are all interconnected, because these are especially finance, is cross-cutting. It cross-cuts cross-cuts across all sectors.
Right.
Whatever item is price, you would have to involve finance.
Okay. And so how long were you in Vienna for?
I arrived 2013, and in the meantime, I traveled back and forth Sydney, and I left Vienna second quarter 2019.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then next the opportunity came for you to go to Doha, Qatar, which is a Middle Eastern country. How did that come about?
So that was during an official mission. So during the times at the UN, from time to time, we deploy projects. So the project would require official missions and travel. So there was an occasion that I presented the outcome of the project to the stakeholders in the GCC. And that was the opportunity that prompted me. And I further engaged with them, and I managed to capitalize the opportunity and strike a balance between UN and the GCC, so they arranged sort of positions for me.
And the GCC meaning Gulf Cooperation Council.
Yes. It's like a union among the 6 member states here.
Is it a petroleum exporting country? So
yes. All the state members, they are the commodity-based economies. They're now therefore they're eager towards economic diversification in midst of a collapse of oil price recently. Yeah.
Okay, Jyoti?
Yeah. How did your banking and finance knowledge help you to develop all these analytical skills as what is required? At the same time, you are also a researcher in the industrial development projects. On reflection, how did the major learning points, what you did in the undergrad and also in your PhD, has culminated to give you this kind of impetus to carry on this project successfully?
Right. So I would say maybe I will just use my more recent example because that's more closer to my memory. So I'll talk about how the knowledge I acquired helped me some of the quote-unquote the out of the deal right in my current situation. This is perhaps a more relevant topic to me as we have just finalized the allocation, preliminary allocations of the budget. Now, in example, when I support the senior officials to defend the green paper before it gets into the white paper stage, and not comes as a surprise that there's a lot of compromisation, disagreement. Nevertheless, the common line is established. In these situations, it's danger when one party gives out too much, and because it becomes clear that now all the sectors that economy recovery measures of the financial incentive, that's back to the topic, has so much important role to play in this pandemic, global crisis here. People, private sectors, they are all suffering. Now, one of the measures we put forward, it entails about the subsidy fund for local electricity and foods. This would require a detailed design of the mechanism. Well, we face a resistance that the Ministry of Finance clear on turning off the tap of the subsidy scheme for 26 million. So the knowledge comes into the context when we would have to develop a counter proposal to convince the counterpart to allocate again the budget. Some of the rationale I developed, for instance, the active and aggressive monetary policy of some, I share with them the concept that this aggressive monetary policy of some competitors, China, India, have made our local industry less competitive in export. Therefore, we have to find a way to enable that. Now, why is this important? Because I could recall that one of the lessons I learned from Jyoti in, I think, international banking and finance, we talk about the undervaluation of yuan. Yeah. And what's the implication
the Chinese
of
currency that time?
Yes, how they use it to enhance manufacturing export performance. I use as that example in my meeting. I'm saying that in the international contracts, because in GCC we are pegged to US dollar, and other countries, they have their own autonomous space for the monetary policy, and we are on the weak side because our currencies has been strong for the past few years. So I explained to them how the undervaluation of the currency, if we do not have the space over there, we have to find another remit or space to enhance our local sector here in Oman. So I would say this is one of a case I learned from Monash and how I use it as an example. Because we do not have a space, other countries have a space, so I use it as an endpoint rationale to gain some support from the finance, to support the local policy, to enhance the competitiveness of export. I just use one example.
I'm very happy and I'm very proud that you have used the knowledge what you have learned here, and it's so practical. Good.
Yes, at this
Good.
point in time,
Well,
it was a difficult assignment.
Could you please elaborate? What were you actually doing in Qatar before? I see most of the time in your CV, it is industrial development expert, industrial development diagnostic expert, and you are also the early stage, you are an analyst. And,
Yes.
and generally, all these are falling into one kind of a category, but is it in different industries you are doing, or is it for the similar industry of the petroleum or something like that?
So I believe the expert and diagnostics role, I assumed those roles in the 4 years back. So at that point in time was in the United Nations, and because in the UN we have different clients across different regions, and for different projects, for these clients we have different role to play. So whenever, for instance, I took the role of diagnostic expert for Senegal and Ethiopia, because before you develop the policy, you have to come up with a proper diagnostic. What are the opportunity, challenges, gaps? So that was a project that I worked for 6 months to a year. And then when we finalize the project, and then we move on to another project, and then the more recent context is Oman and Qatar to develop the strategy. And in Qatar side, what they did, back to your questions, what I did with the GCC in Qatar. So because I was still with the UN, so how they brought me here is that they developed a project because in my activity, I would have to secure my line of finance, my line of budget. So what they do is they go through the project path. So they requested the council allocate a budget for a project and bring me here as a project manager. And then because then the budget itself get exhausted, so the government through the cabinet appoint me again as the advisor to the vice minister. This is my current role.
Wow.
Can I say indirectly you were also the financial controller there for these projects?
Yes.
It appears to be like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Jyothi, I think now, we want to go to probably part C. What do you think?
A little bit about your Vienna experience.
Oh, yes. Tell me. Go, Jyothi.
I know you already told me about when did you join and how you prepared. And Charles, how is your daily working life with the international studies, with diverse culture? What are the challenges? What are the advantages and ethical issues? I'm sure you were a Malaysian at the beginning and you were just in domestic country, and now you have gone worldwide and you are working with many different cultured people, many different races, Europeans, Americans, the Omanians. And how do you face the challenge of adapting your cultural situations with them? It's a very important thing, because you have gone into such a diversity.
Yes. So I was probably briefly go through how I thought about the daily jobs in Vienna. It was a good environment in the international organizations that thinkers and doers around the world. They are striving to excel themselves in so many ways, and the work environment itself is mind-provoking. And the advantage of the international organization is that the management put emphasis on forging a better teams, intra-divisions units. So less fragmented approach, more integrated approach. It's quite a difference that I can see in our Malaysian local context. And the colleagues at all levels, regardless your ranking, your ranks, your positions, We all work laboriously and tenaciously on the most prevailing issue as a team. And that I think this has enlarged my horizon by and large and strengthened my critical trait. This is also how I build up my trait. Now back to the challenges, cultural issues. I think just like many other Asian expats, I've been blessed to discover different cultures around the world and work with people from all walks of life. Apart from work, understanding culture from different regions and country allows one to complement the individual development. They would help me on the listening that I mentioned. And what might apply to the undergrad student, for instance, the action program to Australia. It might help them to explore diversity of culture. And once you learn their culture, you understand them, it helps you on how to listen to them.
Yeah. One last, a little bit of a frank question. How stressful is your job?
Yes, it requires absolute composure here because I believe jobs are always stressful.
Yeah.
In all categories. If you are not stressful, maybe you're not pushing up yourself. I believe maybe at my current stage and as far as my colleagues, I think they are all stressful.
What's your working hours on average, Charles?
Average working hours or
a week?
9 to 5 or what? What's your day? What's your day like?
Okay, so in GCC is slightly different because at the office hour it starts at 7 o'clock in the morning. It starts 7 o'clock in the morning. There's no lunch break, so they close the shops around 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And normally after 3 o'clock, I stay in office and I work on my research. I do have my personal research agenda.
Wow.
Yes, I still work on academic research with colleagues from university.
Yeah. Is that, I think the nature of those hours, is that because it's just so hot in the afternoon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then they get out the social life in the evening. Yeah, but I rest quite early at 9, 10, but I got up early too. Because early time when there's quiet and it allows you to do some critical thinking, to plan activities for the day.
Amazing. Amazing to see the sunrise in your office.
Yeah. Dr. Charles, see,
yes,
you are a very dedicated student and you are always an achiever while you were in the university. I know about you. But what would you advise to our current students, excluding this pandemic issue, which is quite contemporary? But what would you advise for them to reach to something like what you are? Because we want our students to go far like you.
Thank you. So I think I have a few keywords here: versatility, resilience, composure, business acumen. These are among the important traits I've seen among the international experts, senior colleagues, over and above what might be expected on the technical skills. The other one is we should not expect university curriculum to give us all the solution in life and in work.
That's right.
The courses and curriculum are by all means tools to unlock our understanding, thinking, and imagination to the more recent development. Now, in here, our teachers are like Dr. Jyoti plays a critical role part in coaching me in the first period, but still, we are responsible for our own development afterwards, and we have to take ownership of our life. But during the critical period is very important so that the course curriculum, it allows you to unlock your imaginations, the thinking. So therefore, a candidate should make good use of the knowledge, skills, training to help them tap into the most recent debate. So the environment attitude, the ecosystem, understand what are the emerging trends, like an assignment. You rightly used that point in time, there was an undervaluation of yuan. So it allows you to tap into the most recent debate, understanding the dynamic and process of incidents. So all the assignments have to be designed carefully and practically so that the student have the opportunity and students have to be also proactive and interact with friends, with teachers in the university, because it's a good environment, good international environment.
That's right.
To stimulate the, yeah.
Strikes me, Charles, like just looking back, like where you are now, and you know, the late Steve Jobs said it well. You look back, you can connect the dots, but it's very hard to connect the dots going forward. And this is why we're having these interviews, because undergraduates and those who are in accounting, finance major or other majors, they're always trying to think, you know, how do we connect the dots going forward? You know, how can we get to the next level? And yeah, it's an impossible task to do without having a belief in yourself and having confidence in yourself, and just having a mindset where you want to take a little bit of risk and face some uncertainty. And it strikes me that once you got into that link with your PhD with that supervisor, the dots started to connect, because then that connected you to Vienna, then that connected you to Qatar, then that connected you to Muscat. It seems that, can you just fill us in on that last connection that is between Monash and you going to Sydney to do your PhD? I think that would be really helpful for students.
Yes. So you mean from Monash to Sydney, because right after the graduate of the honors, I wanted to pursue finance in particular the area of the stock price informative. And that at the point in time there was a literature, the emerging
Price informativeness, yeah.
And after reviewing, I found potential candidates of the supervisors that could perhaps supervise me in this area. And I also wanted to pursue and explore myself into different environments. That's a motivation. And then I started to put on, like many other students. I tried UNSW, I tried Monash Australia, and I tried different universities. And the choice of a UNSW, because it comes timely. It comes timely for the second semester. I graduated in the first semester, so I
okay.
Yeah.
And they sent you an offer, and it was just the right time.
Yes, yes.
That is wonderful.
Wonderful.
Now, of course, you have got very diverse knowledge in the industry development, and of course, I can't be asking you something very petty in finance. What is your next plan, if you don't mind? Are you planning to further your any other professional studies, or are you going to be with the UN back to Vienna again?
Speaking about the study and knowledge, so I do not have the vanity to assume that I can do anything or know everything. So definitely there's a room of improvement. Yes, I wanted study fund. I wanted to explore more about the international trade law, as I've been involved more recently in the regional and world trade agreement reform. I wanted to learn more on the practical and law terms and how I can add more value to it. This is a study. And speaking of the next plan, because the cabinet has just renewed my contract, I believe that I will be with the ministry for a short period of time until I landed the strategy. I do want to return to Malaysia, let's say, in the foreseeable 2-3 years, to settle down. And then there I will build again the plan, maybe to explore again different areas. But I believe that the current chapter, it's about to come to an end, and it's going to start a new chapter, maybe on the personal side. Yeah.
But I personally believe that you will be an excellent lecturer. If you get into academics, you are going to really turn things to a different direction. So much experience you have now.
Or join the government. Join the government in Malaysia. You know, there's all different ways of contributing to your country. So I think that's wonderful.
Yes, and I can also put more emphasis on my research portfolio, because now I can only work on a part-time basis after my work as a personal agenda. Wow. And there's still quite a lot of good ideas floating around. I really wanted to learn that.
Wow.
Good. Wonderful. Prof, any other questions?
Well, let's just close this up. And Charles, just any final parting words of encouragement for these undergraduate finance students, especially like they're doing second year, they're doing corporate finance, they've studied foundations in finance, and they're going to take Jyothi's unit, derivatives. And I think a big question they might have in their mind is, well, do I just finish after third year, or do I do an honours like you did the honours, and that led you to a brand new world in where you can go international? And it's just something that we haven't talked to potential honours students about this is what can it lead to. Could you just comment on students thinking about doing an honours? What was your view and how that opened doors for you?
I would say that for undergraduate, for instance, the second year or third year student, it is fine to stay diversified during the outset of the courses. And because at that point in time, probably they are doing the scoping to build their own vision, the path for future development. So when we deploy the syllabus, assignment, lectures or tutors, we have to share with them some sort of a global trending issues, pressing issues, allow them to think, because what's happening now, those are the area where they would open up the opportunity. So they have to start thinking, what is the causes of the trade war? What's the causes of the fintech? They have to start relating that, stay diversified. And then upon the third year, end of the third, they probably have their mindset, what might the path they might wanted to pursue. So once they have set their mind on the path to pursue, they have to be prepared to do a deep dive. Honors or not honors, whether to do a PhD or not, it's simply dependent on the candidate's visions, what they wanted to be, what they wanted to be. They wanted to be a policymaker, analyst, or they wanted to work in the banks, because some career would require postgrad, but some would not. So therefore, it's important to enhance the awareness of the students about different global issues, trends, and different cases, so that they have enough space of imaginations to set their path. Because if they work in a confined environment, there's so much options, so many options at hand.
Good advice. This is a very good advice for students.
I must say, I think for especially those honours students thinking about doing a PhD, it might be even good that they contact you, Charles, if they've got questions, especially at that level, because going from honours to PhD is a big step in itself, and it's always good to be able to get some advice from a fellow PhD student, someone who's actually taken that route. And just rounding up, I'm really impressed about how the advice that you are giving to undergraduate students, like the versatility, resilience, communication, and you mentioned this many times, business acumen. And business acumen meaning it's just trying to understand the multiple viewpoints of a problem, and it's not just a one way of solving a problem. And when you are trying to get a middle ground between various parties, you need to understand those parties' views of that problem. Am I right?
Yes, because because in the market, we always talk about problem solving. But before doing the problem solving, first you have to identify the problem. You have to know there's a problem there. So once you know there's a problem, you're already halfway through, and then you talk about problem solving skills. So this is a sort of a critical thinking a candidate should have. But these things cannot be taught. We can only let them experience, let them expose to the international topic debate. I would say so, yes.
That's amazing. Well, let's just wrap it up there. And I really appreciate Charles, Dr. Charles, you giving your time to give some of your advice on your journey. And it's an amazing journey that's taken you halfway around the world. Like, that's as far as you can go. Like, if you keep going, you actually come closer to Malaysia as you come around the Pacific. So I think it's amazing where you are now. Dr. Charles from Muscat, thank you for being in our edition 7 of Leaders in Accounting and Finance. Thank you, Dr. Charles.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you. Take care. Be safe.
Yes.
Good luck to you. Hope
Thank
to see you when you come around to Malaysia.
Sure. Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Doctor.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you
All
very
right.
Thank
much.
you.
Cheers for now.
Right.